Good evening. Today we're stepping back 4.7 million years to a morning that's nothing like the one you'll wake up to tomorrow. And yet, in some strange ways, your brain will recognize it. The first thing you notice isn't the light. It's the ground, cold and uneven under your hip, with the faint imprint of stones pressed into your skin. You've been sleeping on dirt, or perhaps on a thin mat of reeds, woven hastily, brittle in place, carrying the faint scent of the riverbank they came from. The second thing is the smell. Damp earth, the ghost of last night's fire, just a thread of smoke curling up from the embers, sharp and almost metallic in your nose. And underneath that, the smell of people, real people, unwashed and warm from sleep, the kind of scent that's intimate and communal all at once. It isn't pleasant by modern standards, but there's comfort here. It means you're not alone. Then comes the sound. Small movements ripple through the cluster of bodies around you. Someone shifts and lets out a low sigh. A child whimpers softly in their sleep and is hushed by the weight of a hand. Somewhere beyond your group, you hear the faint chuckle of water, maybe a stream, maybe just a trickle of rain collected in a rock hole. And over all of it, the layered noise of the wild. Insects droning, birds calling, leaves stirring in the early air. Your eyes open slowly. Above you, the sky is pale, not yet bright, but no longer black. The light here isn't an alarm clock that tells you it's time to start the day. It's a warning that the night's protection is fading. The dark may have its own dangers, but daylight wakes everything, prey and predator alike. Before you move, you listen. This is instinct, the same one that still makes you pause in a dark hallway when you hear something you can't quite place. Your ancestors perfected it. The brain does a quick scan, not of a calendar or an inbox, but of the surrounding world. Any new sounds? Any silence where there shouldn't be? In neuroscience, they call this threat monitoring. You just know it as the subtle tension in your chest before you confirm you're safe. To your left, someone is already sitting up, scanning the tree line. To your right, another figure rubs their eyes and runs a hand over the dirt at their side, checking for the spear they left there the night before. No one speaks. There's no good morning here. That kind of language hasn't been invented yet, but there's a shared sense of acknowledgement. We're all still here, and that's worth more than anything else. Waking up alive isn't taken for granted. There's no certainty you'll get another night like this, or another morning. The relief is quiet, unspoken, but it's there. It's the same relief you feel even now, when you check a text you were worried about and see it's nothing urgent, or when you realize the noise outside your window is just the wind. Your body relaxes, because for another moment, you're safe. You shift to sit up. The ground protests against your spine. Your feet are bare, and they meet the cool earth with a jolt. The day hasn't even started, and your body already knows it will end tired. But there's no alternative. You stand, shake the stiffness from your limbs, and glance toward the horizon. Somewhere out there is food, water, and everything you need to survive. And somewhere out there is everything that might stop you from getting it. Hunger doesn't wait politely in this world. It's there the moment you wake. Quiet at first, but insistent, like a drumbeat somewhere in the background that only grows louder as the morning stretches on. Here, you don't plan meals. There's no mental list of what's in the fridge, no debating whether you feel like eggs or toast, cereal or coffee. Breakfast isn't a choice, it's a hunt. And the question isn't what you'll eat, it's if you'll eat. Some mornings start with luck. You remember a cluster of berry bushes you saw the day before, and you get to them before the birds have stripped them bare. You crouch low, fingers stained red and sticky as you pluck the fruit. You don't savor the taste. There's no time for that. You eat quickly, your brain still scanning for movement in the brush. This is not the romantic foraging scene in movies. This is fueling the body before something else decides your fuel. Other mornings are harder. The berries are gone. The roots you dig up are thin and stringy, or they snap off in your hands before you can pull them free. Maybe you catch the faint smell of something sweet, honey, but the hive is high in a tree, and the bees are already alert, swarming, ready to defend what's theirs. You weigh the risks, stings you'll survive versus the possibility of falling and breaking something you won't. Hunger pushes you to try anyway. Protein is the hardest prize. Eggs are worth their weight in gold here. Not that gold means anything to you. And you take them where you can find them. A nest tucked under a bush, a hollow in the crook of a tree branch. Small animals are an option if you can catch them, but that's rare. More often, protein comes in smaller, less appealing forms. Beetle, fat white grubs pulled from rotting logs, the occasional lizard if you're quick enough. You don't think about flavor. You think about calories because your body is built, as all human bodies are, to crave dense, energy-rich food. That craving is still in you today, even if now it leads you toward chocolate instead of termites. And then there's scavenging, the prehistoric gamble. You come across the carcass of an animal. Maybe it's a deer, maybe it's something bigger. The meat is fresh enough to eat, but the question is, who killed it? And are they still nearby? You look for signs, deep claw marks, drag trails in the dirt, tracks pressed into the soil. You sniff the air. Your body is already running calculations you don't consciously understand, the same way your brain still makes snap judgments now about whether a situation feels safe or not. Neuroscience calls it the amygdala's rapid appraisal, the prehistoric part of the brain checking threat before reason gets involved. Sometimes you take the risk. You cut away a chunk of meat and move quickly. Sometimes you decide it's not worth it, that the calories you'd gain aren't worth the predator that might return. Hunger and fear are two sides of the same coin here, and your survival depends on knowing which side to choose. But hunger is only half the morning's battle. The other is thirst. Water is life, but it's never as simple as finding a stream and drinking. You might know where the water was yesterday, but rivers shrink, pools dry up, and new dangers appear overnight. Even when you find it, you hesitate. The water might be still and clear, reflecting the sky like a mirror, but that surface could be hiding the dark shape of a crocodile just below. Approaching water is a ritual. You scan the banks for movement. You listen for splashes, for the sudden absence of insect noise. You crouch low, keeping your eyes on the surface, even as you dip your hands in. If you have time, you let the dirt settle, pouring off the clearer water from the top. Maybe you strain it through a handful of grass. Often, you don't bother. Thirst has a way of silencing caution. And here's where your modern brain is still living in the past. The same neural circuits that made your ancestors drop everything to drink are still firing today. That urgent, almost irrational craving for water after a workout, or on a hot day, or when you wake in the night. Back then, ignoring it could kill you. Now, it just sends you to the kitchen. The truth is, every mouthful, whether of berries, grubs, or muddy water, comes with risk, but the brain rewards you for taking it. A rush of dopamine, the pleasure chemical signal that says, yes, this was the right choice, even if the logic is questionable. That's why eating something comforting today still makes you feel safe, even if your hunt took place in the snack aisle. By the time the sun is fully up, you've either eaten or you haven't, and either way, you're still alive. That's enough to move on to the next task. The day's real work is just beginning. If you've ever had to leave the house wearing something you didn't like, maybe the only clean shirt was the one with the stain, maybe your shoes didn't match, you've had a small taste of prehistoric fashion. Except here, the stakes aren't about looking awkward in public, they're about not freezing to death. Clothing isn't an expression of personality, it's whatever you've managed to make, steal, or salvage. A hide from an animal caught weeks ago, scraped and dried until it's stiff and heavy. A strip of woven plant fiber that started as a rope and ended up as a belt. The scent is always the same. Smoke from the fire, sweat from the body, and a lingering trace of the animal or plant it came from. There are no seasons in the fashion sense, but there are seasons in survival. When the cold comes, you layer anything you can. Furs with the coarse hair still clinging to them, leaves sewn loosely together with plant sinew, extra hides wrapped around the feet, tied with twisted reeds. When the heat comes, you strip it all away, knowing that every layer you shed is one less thing to protect you when the nights turn cold again. And there's no closet. If you're not wearing it, you're sleeping on, sitting on it, or carrying it. Your wardrobe is as mobile as you are. Security isn't something you have, it's something you make, moment by moment. The group moves often, sometimes without warning, because the land changes quickly. A river dries up. The wind shifts, carrying the scent of predators. A rival group is spotted in the distance. In modern life, we might call this being flexible. Back then, it's called staying alive. And your brain, even now, is wired to respond to this kind of unpredictability. Neuroscientists call it threat anticipation, the subtle spike in stress hormone when you know change is coming, even if you don't know what it is. It's the same flicker of unease you feel when your boss emails, "We need to talk," without saying why. That comes from mornings like these, when the signal to move meant life or death. Predator awareness is a full-time job. You don't just look. You listen for the sudden stillness when birds stop calling. You feel the way the air changes, cooler in the shadow of something large, warmer when the wind shifts away from you. It's the constant mapping of your surroundings. That bush was moving, now it's still. That patch of grass has been flattened since yesterday. Your ancestors weren't born paranoid. They learned that survival meant noticing what others didn't, and you still carry that wiring. The reason your skin prickles when you walk into a room that feels off. Communication here is stripped down to the essentials. There's no language, no poetry, no telling long stories about your dreams. There's pointing at food, at danger, at the sky if rain is coming. There's grunting approval or disapproval. There's the lift of eyebrows that means look, and the narrowing of eyes that means stop. And somehow, it's enough. One glance can send half the group running towards safety. A single sound can bring everyone to stillness. Neuroscientists studying nonverbal communication note that the human brain processes facial expressions faster than words, a survival feature born in times exactly like this. Your mind learned to read a look before it learned to read a sentence. At night, communication shifts again. The urgency fades and gestures become slower, more open. Someone might mime the shape of an animal they saw that day, tracing its horns in the air. Someone else might act out how they climbed for fruit, exaggerating the sway of the branches. These are the beginnings of shared culture. Memory passed not by words, but by imitation. You laugh, even without language, because the part of the brain that finds humor in shared experience has been with us since before speech itself. So when you see someone today raise their eyebrows at you in the exact same way, or tilt their chin towards something they want you to notice, remember, they're speaking a language millions of years old. The day's real work doesn't begin with a ceremony. There's no morning meeting, no checklist. You know what needs to be done because the same things have needed to be done every day of your life. Find food, find water, stay alive. Hunting is the high-risk, high-reward choice. It starts quietly, tracking. You crouch low to examine a faint depression in the dirt, the curve of a hoofprint softened by wind overnight. You press your fingers into the soil, feeling whether it's still damp from the animal's weight. Your brain is doing rapid, almost invisible calculations. How old the track is, which way the animal moved, how far it might have gone. Even today, that part of your mind is still there. The one that can glance at a set of footprints in the snow and know they're fresh, or smell that the rain is coming before the sky changes. You follow at a distance, careful with each step. The spear in your hand is heavy, and you're aware of its limits. You get one throw, one chance. If you miss, the animal will be gone, or worse, it will turn. There's no illusion of fairness here. If it runs, you might go hungry. If it fights, you might not make it home. Sometimes you succeed. The throw is true. The animal falls, and you call out to the others with a sharp, rhythmic sound that carries over the land. But more often, the hunt ends with nothing but an empty stomach and a deeper respect for how fast prey can be. Gathering is safer, and in truth, it's what keeps the group alive most days. You spend hours moving slowly through the brush, eyes scanning for anything edible. A flash of color catches your eye. Berries, small and clustered. You kneel, brushing aside leaves to check the plant's stem. Your brain's visual memory works here like it still does in the grocery store, identifying familiar shapes and colors faster than conscious thought. You pick, you test, you collect. Roots are harder work. You dig with a stick, fingers scraping in the dirt, tugging the stubborn plant free. Nuts require cracking, sometimes with stones, sometimes with teeth, sometimes not at all if your jaw is already aching from yesterday's effort. Every action is physical. There is no sitting still to make a living here. Survival is movement. Shelter is a constant project. It's not a place you own. It's a structure you borrow from the land. Maybe it's a lean-to of branches angled against a tree trunk, covered in leaves. Maybe it's a hide stretched between poles, the edges tied down with strips of bark. Sometimes it's a cave, though caves come with their own risks. Bears, snakes, flooding when the rain comes. Nothing is built to last. You carry your tools, not your home. When it's time to move, you leave most of it behind, taking only what can be remade at the next stop. Neuroscience has a term for the comfort humans get from familiar environment, place attachment. But here, that attachment is temporary by necessity. You don't stay long enough to grow sentiment. The safest place is wherever you are right now, that keeps you alive till tomorrow. Fire is the heart of the camp. It's warmth on cold nights, safety against predators, and a way to transform food from dangerous to edible. But it's also the group's center, the prehistoric version of a living room. People drift toward it after the day's work, settling into the glow. Stories are acted out in gestures, the day's successes and close calls shared through movement and expression. Your brain loves this, still does, because firelight and shared presence were once the signal that you'd made it through another day. Living in a group is both the reason you survive and the reason you sometimes wish you could walk away. The group is a safety mechanism. More eyes to watch for predators, more hands to carry food, more bodies to share warmth. But more people also means more friction. Everyone sees what you do. Everyone knows who brings back food and who lingers too long at the fire. There's no hiding in this world. The human brain is still wired for this awareness. It's why social embarrassment stings so sharply today. The same pain centers that light up for physical injury light up when we feel judged or excluded, because in the past, social rejection could literally be fatal. Parenting is not about enrichment or playdates. It's about survival training from the moment a child can walk. They learn to stay within sight of the group, to identify the plants they can and can't eat, to recognize the sound of danger in a parent's voice. Every lesson is urgent. There is no maybe next time, because there may not be a next time. Conflicts happen. They start over food. Someone took more than their share, or over territory, or over the care of a child. They end quickly. A shove, a sharp blow, a physical standoff until one person backs down. And when it's done, it's done. Survival doesn't allow for grudges. Holding on to anger would mean wasting energy you can't afford to waste. The punishment no one wants is being cut out of the group. Alone, you are slower, colder, and far more likely to be hunted. Neuroscience shows that the fear of isolation still lives in us. It's why even the hint of being left out can make your chest feel tight. That's not drama. It's millions of years of survival coding still firing in the modern world. But there's another truth here. Conflict doesn't destroy the group because the group can't afford to let it. Disputes are short-lived, and cooperation always returns because together is the only way forward. It's a lesson the brain remembers, even now, why people reconcile after fights, why communities rebuild after crises. Deep down, your mind still knows. Without the others, you don't last long. There's a truth you learn early here. The land will never give you everything you need in one place, for long. A stream that runs clear in the rainy season will shrink to a trickle. A grove heavy with fruit one month will be bare the next. The animals you track will vanish without warning, taking their trails with them. Staying too long in one place is the same as waiting for hunger to find you. So the group moves. Not every day, but often enough that nothing feels permanent. A migration begins with signs. The water is low, the meat is scarce, or the air itself changes, heavy with heat that says the dry season is coming, or sharp with the scent of storms that will flood the low ground. Sometimes the decision is obvious. Sometimes it's an argument around the fire, told in grunts and gestures until the strongest voices win. The morning you leave, there's no packing in the modern sense, no boxes, no labels, no suitcase you drag to the road. You take what you can carry and nothing more. Tools, weapons, a few pieces of hide for warmth. The rest is left behind, abandoned to the wind and whatever creatures claim it next. The pace is set by the slowest, a child too tired to walk, an elder whose knees ache after the first mile. You move as a line across the land, spaced close enough to see each other, but far enough that you can hear trouble coming from either side. The world is open here, and it feels both endless and fragile. The terrain changes under your feet. One day it's dry plains, the sun pressing down on your shoulders until your skin stings. Another day it's dense forest, where each step feels watched. A rustle overhead could be a bird, it could be a snake. Your brain doesn't decide instantly which. It holds both possibilities at once, an ancient survival trick called threat uncertainty. Even now, you still use it, pausing when you hear an unfamiliar sound in your house, considering every explanation before you move. Water is always on the mind. You scan for the shimmer of it in the distance, for the darker green of plants that grow near its edges. When you find it, there's relief, but it's temporary. This might be the last water you see for days. The brain stores the location like a map, not in words, but in pictures and landmarks. That crooked tree, that ridge of stone. This mental mapping is still part of you today. The reason you can remember the turn by turn to a place you've only been once. Rest stops are brief and practical. A cluster of rocks for shelter from the wind. A shallow dip in the land where a fire will burn low without being seen from far away. You don't rest long enough to grow attached, because the next morning you'll be moving again. At night, when the fire is lit, the mood shifts. Faces glow in the flicker, and the air smells of smoke and whatever food could be found. This is when the stories come, not written, not even spoken in the way we think of speech, but told through motion, sound, and rhythm. Someone mimes the shape of a great animal they saw days ago, their arms curved wide to show its horns. Someone else acts out the moment the spear flew, the cheer when it struck. These stories aren't for entertainment alone. They are maps of memory, survival lessons disguised as performance. Your brain is made for this, to remember stories longer than facts, because once, remembering them was the only way to stay alive. And so the migration continues, day after day, step after step. The rhythm of walking, the rhythm of scanning the horizon, the rhythm of knowing that survival is not a place you reach. It's something you carry with you. If there's one thing your ancestors knew better than anything, it was the season. Not in the way we know them now, marked neatly on a calendar, announced on the news, planned around for holidays, but in the deep physical knowing that comes from living entirely inside them. You didn't need a weather app to tell you change was coming. You felt it in the wind. You saw it in the slant of the sun, the way shadows grew longer or shorter on familiar ground. You heard it in the birds, the sudden silence when they left, or the chorus of calls when they returned. Every shift in the world around you was a message, and your brain, even now, still has this skill. Neuroscientists call it environmental attunement, the unconscious ability to notice changes in temperature, light, or sound before you're fully aware of them. Spring was the season of work. The land woke slowly, green shoots pushing through soil that still held the cold of winter. You gathered what grew, and watched for the return of animals you hadn't seen in months. The days were longer, but the nights could still bite. Fire stayed close by until the warmth was steady. Summer was about abundance. Plants heavy with fruit, rivers full, herds grazing nearby. But it was also a warning season, the time to store, to dry meat, to collect seeds. The brain's instinct to prepare for future scarcity evolved here, in this gap between plenty and hardship. It's why you still feel uneasy when the pantry looks low, even if the store is a 5-minute walk away. Autumn was about urgency. The light shifted. The air carried the first threads of cold. Animals grew fat on what remained of summer, and you watched them closely, knowing their movements would tell you when to move, too. You picked the last of the berries, cracked open the nuts, dug up the roots, storing every bit you could carry. There was no illusion here. The world was about to close in. And then winter came. It didn't arrive with a single storm, but with a slow tightening of the days. Mornings began with frost under your bare feet. Nights with a cold so sharp, it seemed to steal the air from your chest. Food became scarce. Water harder to reach as ice claimed the edges of streams. You learned to read the sky for snow, the way the clouds sank lower, heavier, and the air turned still before the first flakes. In winter, every movement was deliberate. You walked less to conserve heat. You stayed closer to the group, pressing together under hides stiffened from cold. The fire was never allowed to die. The embers banked under ash at night, coaxed back to life at dawn. There was no margin for error. The smallest wound could fester. The slightest sickness could take you. Hunger was constant, but you learned to quiet it, to let your body slow, to move only when necessary. This is where your modern winter blues come from. The shift in mood and energy as daylight shrinks. Your ancestors felt it too, but for them, slowing down wasn't optional. It was survival. And yet, winter was also a season of closeness. The nights were long, the world outside harsh. The fire became the center of life, and the stories grew longer. You learned from them how to spot the thin ice on a river, which plants could still be found under snow, how to follow the tracks of animals that might lead you to food. The brain's love for storytelling as a teaching tool is older than language itself. Born in winters like these, nature spoke constantly, in the shape of clouds, in the smell of the wind, in the tilt of the moon. And you listened, because not listening could mean the end. And the truth is, you still can. Somewhere in your mind, the same ancient circuitry notices when the air smells like rain, or when the evening light is strange. You may ignore it now, but back then, it was the only weather forecast you had. Winter eventually loosened its grip. The first thaw came with the sound of water moving again, trickling under the ice. Shoots pushed up through the softened ground. Animals returned to graze, but no one celebrated too soon. The memory of hunger, of cold, of the long dark stayed with you, shaping every choice in the warmer months ahead. It still shapes you now. The instinct to prepare, to save just in case, to find comfort in warmth and light when they return. If you were alive 7 million years ago, you didn't count your years, you counted your days. Because the truth is, you weren't expected to have very many of them. Science can't give us an exact number for life expectancy back then. No one was keeping records, and the fossils we have are rare. But from studying early hominin remains and comparing them with hunter-gatherer groups in more recent history, researchers estimate that most people who made it to adulthood could expect to live maybe 30 to 40 years at most, and many never made it that far. Infant mortality was brutally high. Nearly half of all children died before the age of 5. A fall, a fever, a bad winter, any of these could take a life before it had much chance to begin. Surviving childhood was an achievement in itself. Your first memories might include watching siblings or cousins vanish from the group, their absence unmarked, except in the way your mother's eyes followed the smallest children more closely afterward. If you reached your teens, you were already an adult in the eyes of the group, strong enough to work, to hunt, to bear children. There was no gap year. between childhood and responsibility. The tasks of survival didn't wait for you to feel ready. By your mid-teens, you were contributing fully, because every pair of hands made the difference between enough food and not enough. Injuries were often fatal. A broken bone might heal if you were lucky and had the support of others, but an infection could kill in days. There were no antibiotics, no sterile bandages. Even a small cut from a sharp rock could turn deadly if it became infected. And here's the haunting part. Your brain is still wired to remember pain vividly because of this. Neuroscientists call it the negativity bias, the mind's tendency to store threats and painful events more deeply than neutral or pleasant ones. It's not pessimism. It's survival training, passed down from people who couldn't afford to make the same mistake twice. Women faced additional risks. Childbirth was dangerous at any age, and without medical intervention, complications that are routine to fix today, breech births, hemorrhage, prolonged labor, could end both lives. This is one reason women's lifespans were often shorter than men's, despite both living under the same environmental threats. Even for those who survived into what we might now call middle age, the body aged differently. Teeth wore down quickly from the grit in unprocessed food. Joints stiffened from constant movement and lack of rest. Eyesight dimmed without glasses to correct it. And yet, older members of the group held enormous value. They carried knowledge of migration routes, of edible plants, of hunting techniques refined over decades. Their survival was a victory for everyone. The irony is that while the years were short, the days were long. Each one stretched from dawn to dusk with the constant work of staying alive. No one wasted daylight if they could help it. The modern feeling of time slipping away is almost the opposite of your ancestors might have wished for the luxury of boredom. And here's where neuroscience makes an unexpected connection. The stress you feel now when your calendar is too full is processed in some of the same brain regions that once managed survival overload. The feeling is ancient. It's just that now, the predators are deadlines, meetings, and the thousand small demands of modern life. So yes, life was short, but every day you woke, there was the possibility of making it through another one. And in a world where tomorrow was never promised, that was reason enough to try. So here we are, at the edge of the day. We've walked through the mornings when you woke on cold ground and listened before moving. We've followed the search for food and water, the layering of hides and leaves, the scanning for predators that never stopped. We've felt the long pull of migration, the tightening of winter, the way every season asked something different from you and punished you if you failed to answer. We've even counted the years, brief as they were, and seen how much could be packed into a short life. And the thing is, even though your world now is unrecognizable compared to theirs, you are carrying them with you, in your reflexes, in your caution, in your need for connection, in the way you sometimes wake in the night, heart racing, before your mind has caught up to why, in the way you seek warmth and light in winter, or scan a crowd for someone you know. These aren't quirks. They're the living echo of the people who survived long enough to pass that wiring onto you. We like to think we've outgrown those instincts, but they are as much a part of you as your heartbeat. The reason a sudden silence can stop you mid-sentence, the reason your brain feels calmer when you're with people you trust, the reason stories stay in your mind longer than facts. It all started in places like this, under skies like these. Tonight, as you lie here, warm and safe, you can let that sink in. You're the latest link in an unbroken chain that stretches back millions of years. Every person in that chain woke up one more day, scanned the horizon, and made it through. And if your life feels complicated now, too many messages, too many choices, too many plans, maybe remember that once, the only plan was to see another sunrise. It's not a bad perspective to borrow, especially when your mind won't rest. So let the noise fade, let the lights dim. Let yourself imagine the sound of a fire burning low, the murmur of voices that aren't in any language you know, the feel of cool earth under you, and the slow comfort of being surrounded by people who will keep watch while you sleep. You've made it through your day, and in the oldest human sense, that's everything. That's the story I'm telling tonight. Good night.